Alright, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about Tier 10 hype. That's right, boys. This past weekly reset, they announced that they've got a new zone and new content coming. So we're going to dive into the patch notes and have some fun with speculation. Now, previously, they've announced new content 2 weeks before the release, so it's fairly safe bet to assume that we've got around 13 days remaining from the time we'll be putting this video up to get ready for this. So let's jump into the notes and start with the speculation. So we got a new zone and a new raid coming soon. With the new content, we evaluate the balance between DPS and tank players, and will continue to introduce changes to even the playing field between them. So the way this is worded, it looks like it's about equal chances for buffs to DPS players as well as nerfs to tank players. I hope that second part doesn't happen. Obviously I'm biased because I run a tank character, but the way that it is right now, you've got characters that have very strong raid teams that still have a really hard time clearing a raid 6 heroic, and if they nerf tanks anymore, that's really going to be troubling to the majority of the player base to get through challenging content. Now, the real disparity between DPS and tank isn't so much in raid, it's more in the solo content, so pushing through the campaign and the quest, such as like the Obliterate dungeon, or going through trials and Gauntlet. There's such a big disparity and difference between what DPS characters and tank characters can do, and the most simple or the easiest way to balance that just the obvious appearance would be for them to give massive buffs to tank fusions. So if you're a DPS character, you get a fusion, you get a tank fusion to be your front line. If they added 30 to 50% damage reduction across the board to all of the relevant tank fusions, that would be a big step into bridging the gap between what DPS and tank players can do in solo. Maybe some of them, such as the Expedition familiars, having pet procs and things like that to help close the gap, and then you wouldn't have to rebalance the raid meta. So that's what I'm hoping they're going to go through and do. We'll have to wait and see. I am curious to see how many characters that are playing tanks just because of the meta would be interested to switching to DPS or changing their build if the gap between tanks and DPS was closed. So that would be some good discussion that I'd like to see in my messages. Moving on, existing events like PvP and GVG are getting some updates with the content to keep them challenging and rewarding. This I'm expecting and hoping that this will take away the get naked mechanic, where a lot of characters will take off gear, they will lower their total stats to get easier fights because there's no increase in reward for having difficult fights. So the way it works right now, if you have 2250 total stats, then you are getting the maximum amount of rank points that you can get from a PvP battle. If you do one ticket, you can get 300. If you do 5 tickets, you can get 1500. And any increase in your total stats will just get you more difficult opponents. So a lot of characters, they take off their armor, they get easier fights. Same thing in the GVG, and it's actually more common in the GVG. It's obvious cheese, and if they would incentivize players to go after more difficult fights, that would be a great way to fix this. So just whether they increase the scaling or increase the cap, something like that would be fairly simple enough to keep this going. Now, as far as rewarding, I wonder if that just means more coins or if they're going to spice it up in some way. Fun fact right now, before they add in a new tier, if you compare the experience that you get per raid, like if you're going to spend gems on getting a basket of shards, which is 20 raids, or if you're going to spend that same amount of gems on getting a bunch of PvP tickets, if you are level 550 or above, it's actually faster to get, if you're trying to get more skill points, to actually go through PvP right now. Now that's going to change when a new raid comes in, but it kind of just shows you how the end game looks. Let's see, moving on. Various other adjustments and additions will be coming with the content as well. Doesn't really tell me anything. And then finally, with the new update, we'll be adding a new existing feature related to familiars. So this could be something like pet battles, maybe, where it's just familiars, teams versus familiars. Maybe they're adding more familiar slots to content. That's something I've wanted to see, where you go into maybe trials, you have 3 familiar slots, and Gauntlet you have 5 familiar slots, so you can have more team variety or something like that. It kind of feels bad to put a lot of effort into these familiars and fusions once you get them, if you just end up ultimately not using them ever again. When something new comes out or you change your build, they just kind of sit in your stable forever. So it could be pet battles, it could be more interesting team compositions. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. I hope it's pretty compelling. Familiars is is one of the coolest aspects of the game, but you only use it in PvP, trials and gauntlets, and when you're going through the quest, and as well as invasions. And since you put so much time into it, it would be nice to see that becoming more rewarding. So when the zone comes in, I'm expecting 2 regular dungeons, a 3rd special dungeon similar to Oblit. Yes, I'm still here. And 8 flags. That's what's happened in the last 2 zones. So that's what I'm expecting. But tell me what you think. I'm excited. This is one of the best times to be in the game right now. So you've got 2 weeks to prep for it. Good luck. And I'd like to hear about what you think about the patch notes and what your personal plans are. Are you going to push right out of the gate and try to get in the front, get some of that glory? Or are you going to wait a little bit, let your friends list get through the content, let them get their team stats up, and then you start to progress that way? But whichever way you're going to go with it, I'd like to hear about it, so post down in the comments below. Also, I've started talking to some of the people at Bit Heroes and reaching out to them, and yeah, I know every YouTube video is always talking about like, subbing, and subscribing, but the more people that subscribe and comment on the videos and like the videos, it makes it easier for me to start to request things like community events and just seeing what other options that we have there. So share the video if it helped. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one.